My background is in cardiothoracic surgery, ophthalmology, and clinical research. I have been qualified coming up to 7 years this year, and I studied at Ulster University in Northern Ireland. Currently, I'm working as a nursing development lead in the Belfast Trust in unscheduled care. So I got the idea for writing So You've Registered What Now because I drew on my own experience as a newly registered nurse. I had a great preceptorship when I first started, but that didn't always make me feel that I was any less alone in those first few days. There's lots of similar books out there that you can go to and draw upon to help you through those first few weeks and months, but I didn't actually feel that those books were anything like the book that I was writing, because I feel that the way I've written this book, I would hope it would be like a friend for those readers. It's something that is chatty, and it asks you questions, and it makes you think and reflect back on your day about what things went well and what things went, not so well, and how to improve. And it also gives ideas about how you can ask for help and signposts where to get help from. I hope the book's not just a guide for nurses, but that it also gives some hints and tips in, things that, I found useful in my first few weeks and months as a new nurse. I didn't want the book to be another textbook where it's all academic style of writing, because let's face it, you've just finished your degree. You don't really want to be doing that again. I wanted this book to be a comfort for readers and something that you could pick up easily, come back to and return to, and something that readers could rely on. So I just drew upon my own experience to hopefully show that newly registered nurses that they're not alone, and we all go through very similar experiences. So the book is aimed at newly registered nurses, those beginning their careers, student nurses, international nurses coming to work in the UK for the first time. But it's also aimed at the nurse who may be struggling or feels a little lost. There's a lot of things aimed at nurses beginning their careers and their journeys. The book does author something for every nurse. Sometimes it's good just to take a step back and reflect on why we started. And I hope this book offers that for its readers. It's intended to be used as something that you can pick up and come back to, a little guide, something that when you're questioning your journey or yourself, that you can kind of have some reassurance to know that we've all been there, and we've all at one time or another questioned ourselves and whether we were good enough. And in the book, I asked my readers lots of questions. We developed reflections together. We worked through case studies and ask ourselves what we would do different. And I intend this work to make its readers think. Whether you write in the spaces or not, I hope it gives the reader a moment to think and pause about what they would do different in the situation, and also reflect on what they've done well. So my first few days as a newly registered nurse were completely terrifying. I'm not lying in the book when I say that I did feel completely overwhelmed and completely terrified, and that I was like a deer caught in headlights. I had lots of support from my colleagues. My family were fantastic, and they did really, everyone, was very supportive and helped me through. But I still felt really anxious and worried. I was constantly thinking I was going to make a mistake and I would unintentionally harm someone. So as I obviously went through my career, my confidence has developed. I don't have as many of those days. We still do worry, we still do feel anxious, but I don't have as many of those days as I did as a new registrant. So I wrote the book so that those nurses would know that they're not alone, and that it's not a reflection on them about how they're feeling, that this is a totally normal emotion to feel and experience, but it's about how we deal with those emotions that does make the difference. And it's about knowing that you're not alone, you are good enough, and maybe you don't know something, so you need to go and ask for help, or you need to do a little bit of research. I developed a book to help guide nurses through those emotions, and to help them realise that if they speak up for themselves as they would for a patient and ask for help from their colleagues, Maybe it's a coffee with a colleague after work. Maybe you talk to your ward manager, or maybe it's a little debrief at home. You have to kind of talk about these things if you are struggling. So I wanted the readers to know that if they are struggling, that one day they will ride out the storm and a massive sunshine will come and their life as a nurse will be really good if they just make sure they ask for help. And that was my biggest kind of thing that I felt when I was first registering, that I was struggling and I needed to ask for more help. So my experiences immediately post-registration were a feeling of being overwhelmed, anxiety, like I couldn't do it, but my colleagues and my family really helped me through it, and speaking helped, talking about it helped, asking for help and working through different things that I was feeling. It really made all of the difference. The mindset I was in as a newly registered nurse was really overwhelmed and unsure. I felt like I should know more than I did, because I just spent 3 years at university learning the trade, and I felt I should walk out onto this ward and I should know what to do immediately. But in reality, it's not always like that. And it is true that whenever your lecturers tell you that, learning really does only start when you get your PIN, and you only really know how to be a nurse when you get your PIN. And it's about remembering that, and about remembering, yes, university is so important. It provides us with so many skills and so much knowledge, but you're going to learn so much more when you're actually standing there in your uniform with registered nurse written across your chest, and you're really experiencing it because you're fully fledged. But I suppose I based my choices on a lot of the training and knowledge that I did develop while I was studying. I always used evidence-based practice. I always tried to research things that I didn't know about. I used to give myself homework. If I didn't know something, I would have taken that home and maybe on my day off went for a coffee and done a little bit of research, so I knew next time I was faced with that condition or that medication or that phrase, I knew what it was. And that's the best piece of advice that I can give anyone in the same position is, first of all, never be afraid to ask a question, no matter how stupid you think it is. I would always rather overreact about something and ask the question than not asking and keeping quiet and something bad happening. And so always trust your instincts, but always make sure that you are continuing to learn throughout your career. Nursing is a lifelong learning, and it doesn't just stop with your PIN. It does continue on into your whole career as nursing. And 7 years later, I learned something new every single day. The most common pitfalls, I believe, as a newly registered nurse would be being afraid to speak up, keeping quiet, and maybe just thinking if you are wanting to question something about your patient's care, you're wanting to question about how something has been prescribed, you're thinking to yourself, I can't ask that person, that's a consultant, they're so much like higher up than me, and I'm only a newly registered nurse, I'm not good enough to ask them that question. And I think that's a lot of nurses feel a lack of confidence in their first few weeks and months, and I think that's a big pitfall, because they then don't speak their mind and don't open up and don't ask the question. So it's about asking questions to help you understand, to better look after your patients, and always asking the stupid question, because it's never a stupid question. No questions are stupid, and I know that sounds really cliche, but it's completely true in nursing. And you can bet yourself that maybe 4 or 5 nurses before you have asked exactly the same question. Another pitfall that I would say that newly registered nurses have is medication errors, and that's because they don't know the policy maybe just yet, or they're too afraid to challenge or speak up with bad practice from more senior staff. For example, if you're administering IV antibiotics, sometimes a lot of nurses are not doing it as per policy. And I know here in Northern Ireland, our policy would be that if someone is getting IV antibiotics, that the 2 nurses go to the bedside to check the drug and to check the patient. But a lot of the times these new nurses are, yes, they're getting the medication checked, but their second checker is just walking on. And these may be your band 6, your band 7 nurses. You're really experienced senior nurses. They're walking on because that is the culture in that area. So how do we think that those newly registered nurses are going to take that experience? Well, they're going to do exactly the same thing because they're looking up to these more senior staff. So that's a bad culture that's been instilled. So I think that can contribute towards a lot of medication errors, and it can contribute to a lot of bad practice. So I suppose it would be about how to avoid that would be to have the confidence to say, no, actually, I'm aware that it is the policy within the area that we work that you come with me and check that. So if you're going to check this, can you please come with me? And if they don't, then go ask someone else, have someone else help you, but stand your ground. If you know that your practice is based on the policies and procedures within your area, it's backed by evidence, and you know in your gut it's the right thing to do, then stand your ground and say, no, this is the right thing to do. You should be gonna challenge bad practice and speak up. So preceptorship would be, it's not a mentorship, but it would be kind of like a support system, a buddy system. So whenever you're newly registered, you're maybe allocated to another experienced nurse on the ward, and that's per se your buddy. It's someone that you can necessarily go to for questions or queries about your practice. You maybe in your first few weeks are working with this nurse, observing their practice, they're observing your practice, and you're working together. But then when you are essentially out on your own and you're looking after patients yourself, or you're in your area and you're doing things independently more, that person may still be on shift with you. A lot of the time your managers will have you both on the same shift, so that you feel comfortable that you know, okay, so and so is my buddy, they're on today, and you're maybe struggling with something, you know that you can go, okay, I'm going to go and ask for help here. I know that person, I know that nurse, I have a relationship with them, so that you feel comfortable and supportive. So I think that preceptorship is basically a buddy system, a way to help make sure that the new nurses coming out are working within their code of conduct, that they are safe practitioners, that they understand the area they're working in, and also it's a way to reflect on practice and reflect on the good, the bad, and everything in between. And it's a support system, which I think is a fantastic program that should be mandatory. So the changes that are proposed for the new preceptorship framework, I think are great, because healthcare at large changes on a daily basis. Nothing ever stays stagnant for too long. We should always look for better ways of working and ways to be more innovative in how we approach our work. So the fact that preceptorship is essentially moving with the times, we are adapting new ways of working, we're introducing new frameworks that can be up to date, will only be a positive for our newly registered nurses, to help keep them prepared, to help them learning, and basically I think it's a great system, and I think newly registered nurses will get a lot from it, because like I said before, nursing is a profession that you become a lifelong learner, and learning doesn't stop with your PIN. So my advice for anyone going through their preceptorship would be to make the most of it, and to ask for help, to always take colleagues' advice on board and use that to better yourself and your practice. But also remember that sometimes you may have the better way of working, and maybe that's where you verbalize that with your preceptor and think, well, could we try it this way? And this is why, this is the evidence that I think we should try it this way. Because I hear a lot of things where seasoned nurses say, sometimes it's great to have a fresh pair of eyes coming onto the ward, because we've been doing this for so long, and yes, it works, and yes, it's safe practice, but they're just out of university, and this is maybe a new way of doing things, and it may be something that completely transforms care. So preceptorship is fantastic, and I welcome the changes. Yes, there is quite a lot of emphasis on leadership in nursing, and I believe basically from the day that you don your student nurse's uniform, or you take that plunge where you hit submit to try to get into university to become a nurse, that's the first day that your leadership journey begins. And throughout your career, there will be different stages where you'll show leadership, and in many different ways. But as a student nurse, challenging bad practice or helping another student out in their time of need, that shows leadership. Being a newly registered nurse on the ward, and maybe speaking up for your patient who has issues that is ongoing, and maybe no one has listened before, you're being the voice for that patient and you're being the advocate, and that shows leadership. maybe if you're taking charge of a ward or you're taking charge of a bunch of patients, you being their advocate, making sure that their care is gold standard and making sure that they're getting everything they need, that shows leadership. So you don't have to always be the chief nursing officer, you don't have to be a senior nurse, you don't have to be a lead nurse or a director of nursing to show leadership. And of course, in all of those roles, leadership is massively important. But I do believe leadership begins from you being, you taking the choice to come into nursing, because you're taking the initiative that you want to be there for people in their time of needs and in their darkest hours. So being an advocate for our patients and speaking up for our colleagues, to recognise poor practice, to show better ways of working and to be innovative in how we do practice, to show quality improvement and to speak up for our patients, ourselves and our colleagues, that is showing leadership. A nurse of 20 years, a nurse that I really respected, came to me and asked me advice on one of their patients. It said, "Joleen, what do you think about this? I'm just a bit torn. I'm not sure. I would like your advice." I obviously give my advice and everything, but that was one day where I recognised, I can do this, and people are starting to come to me and ask for advice. So maybe the fact that I am there to help, and that's me showing leadership. There's other ways that you show leadership every single day, and it can be, the times where there is new students coming on the ward and you're maybe going out of your way to introduce yourself to them and say, "Look, I may not be your mentor, but I'm newly registered. I know how it feels to be a student. It's very fresh in my mind. So if you need any help, support, if you need a chat, you want to have a coffee, I'm here, come to me if you need anything." So leadership can be shown in so many different ways, and I believe you can be showing leadership from the day and the hour you become a student nurse, a newly registered nurse, or a very senior nurse. So at every stage of nursing, leadership is key. Reflection can be a difficult thing for anyone, and a lot of people I know do struggle with reflection, and I believe that the reason for that is because reflection can involve emotion. It can involve revisiting those bad experiences, those tough experiences that we've had, and it can be difficult going through that again and revisiting it, because a lot of people will think, well, I've went through it, I've got through it, I'm okay, I don't need to think or talk about it. But sometimes those emotions can resurface at different stages, so it's maybe good to go through it through a reflection process, to be like, okay, this is what happened, this is what went wrong and what didn't go well, but pick out the little nuggets of where you may have done something really well, or think about how you would improve next time. It can be really uncomfortable sometimes, but it is a safe space where you can get all your thoughts and feelings down on what did go wrong or how I could do better. It's a way we can ask ourselves questions so that we can improve our practice and to process what happened. It sometimes can be traumatic events, because let's face it, in the world of healthcare, we healthcare workers go through traumatic events all the time, and it's about how we process those events. So reflection is a means where we can get those. It's like I used to think that for me it was like a therapy session. So if I had a bad shift, I would have went home, or on my break I would have started writing. I just would have wrote my feelings down on the page, and maybe the next day or a couple of days later I would have taken that piece of work that I'd written, and I would then go back and look at it and think, okay, I was feeling really, really, really down then, or I was feeling bad about myself, or I was, struggling with this area. So I would have then developed a little action plan for myself to be like, okay, I was really anxious and nervous and had to ask for help for suctioning a patient's airway for their tracheostomy. So then I would have thought, well, how can I avoid feeling like that next time? Well, I could get some more training, or I could ask for help from another colleague who's really good at this area, or from another person of the multidisciplinary team who can maybe show me some hints and tips. So I think that reflection, yes, can be very emotional. A lot of people don't like doing it, but I think the reason why I like doing it is because it was a way where I could see that my practice was improving. My practice was being enhanced and changed. I was developing myself, and looking back on those reflections as a newly registered nurse, I can see how far I've come. So always keep your reflections, and sometimes when you're doing your revalidation, looking back to those experiences, because it's not all about the bad, sometimes it's the really good, and it can be a reflection on a patient, telling you that you have really made their day, that you've meant a lot to them, or it can be about something that you did really well, about a quality improvement program you've brought into your area, or maybe it was a bit of recognition from other members of the team, whether it be your ward manager, whether it be the multidisciplinary team, or just your colleagues, or maybe it's a day you recognise, like, I finally done it, I finally got that catheter inserted, or I finally got those bloods. Reflect on everything, because it'll only be used as a means where you can remember about how far you've come, but it also can be a way where you can improve your practice and to try and give yourself a little action plan about what to do and how I could do things better. So reflection is fantastic in my books. In the times where you feel like you can't do it, in the times where you're struggling, you feel overwhelmed, you feel like the deer caught in headlights, like I felt like, remember that you can do it and you've got this far, and just be confident in yourself and your abilities and confident in your training, but don't be too confident where you feel like you can't ask for help, or that you know it all, because no one ever will know it all. And I think those people who don't ask questions, they're not asking for help. They send red flags in my head, because I'm like, what is actually going on under the surface there? Are they okay? Because maybe they are, but nursing is a profession where we like to talk. We talk about patients' conditions, we talk about how we can improve care, we talk to each other about how we're feeling. So I think in order to protect our profession, protect each other's mental health, and to make sure that everyone is a safe practitioner, and be open and honest, ask for help, and don't bottle things up. But remember that you can do it. Sometimes you just need a little support.